So, on Saturday night, I was trying to keep myself awake, and I was driving home from Atlanta, and I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about, like, dirty books, and how girls, like, will listen to them, and they don't understand, like, how girls can listen to them. And I had a thought, you know, like, we've talked about Siggy Shade a lot here, and if you had to have sex with any of Siggy's male leads.
Oh no.
Which one is it and why?
I hate this so much.
I knew you would hate it, and that's why
What are the
I
options
brought
again? Because I have just like checked out whenever the chat.
You're gonna have to give us options.
I got you. Okay.
Kaitlyn can take care of it for you.
So we have the Krampus.
No, he sucks.
We've all read that one. We have the guy from Swallowing Water, which he's technically like a Atlantean god or whatever, but in the book, for 90% of the book, he is made completely of water.
Toilet water, right?
No, it's just water in general. He just happened to be in the toilet that one time.
He can be toilet water, but...
Fucking water in general. We have the Boogeyman.
No.
Wait, and he was the...
He was the one that stole all the underwear, and he was King Henry.
Right, and then like possessed the broom and came as the broom, right?
He didn't.
No, that was somebody else.
Oh.
No, the broom was in that book, but he didn't do that.
Yeah, that was some other...
But he's also like Henry.
Yes.
Yeah, he's King Henry.
King Henry. Which the guy from Bigfoot is also King Henry.
The guy from Bigfoot is also King Henry. And then we have Bigfoot. We have the guy from Tentacle Entanglement, who doesn't have a fucking name, by the way. And he's like some interdimensional tentacle monster.
The guy from Jack's Head.
Like Cthulhu?
No, it's not Cthulhu. It's not anything like that. They're like shadow tentacles.
What?
Oh.
Boring.
Yeah. We have the guy from Jack's Head, yes. Damn it. Oh, the Morningwood Tree.
Yes.
Mm-mm.
And we don't know anything about him yet, but we also are going to have the Loch Ness Monster.
Very soon.
Very soon.
I mean, I would have to go with either the water guy or the tentacle guy.
I think the water guy or the tentacle guy would be my choice,
I was going to say water guy, too.
Before you named them, I was like, the water guy for sure. Now I'm like, the
Yeah.
tentacle guy, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I was going to say the Jack's Head guy, but he put the girl in in those things they put on horses.
No, he did not put a fucking bridle on her.
I swear to God.
No.
I swear to God.
Even so, he had the shotgun thing, didn't he?
Yes.
Yes.
Like that we were all trying to figure out the double barrel shotgun.
Yeah.
The physics of, yes.
See, this is none of them have desirable, like, sexy traits.
No, they
it's
don't.
all weird. Not weird, but it's all like kink I'm not into.
It's kink no one's into.
into it.
No one's into this.
If you're into it, get help.
Get help.
There's therapy out there for you somewhere.
All right. What's your final answer, Kristen?
I hate that I'm actually thinking about it.
Yeah, you're giving thoughts to your own question.
Because he, like,
how does it
the
feel?
swallowing water guy, like, he, like, made his dick so long it went up through her mouth. And, like...
Oh, that, I forgot
he
about
did.
that.
So
I
it's
was
like,
just stuck
do
on
I
the murdering
really wanna
everyone.
mess with that? Like,
Yeah, he did commit, like, 8 murders.
yeah, and he, like, did
But-
urethral penetration.
Oh.
No, they just talked about
they
it.
just talked
They
about
just talked about it.
Okay. So it's like, on one hand, like, he does sound like the best option, but then also, like, no.
I mean, either this guy or the tentacle guy. In both cases, I'm guessing the water guy can make tentacles out of himself. So
I guess he could.
Yeah. He makes his dick big enough that she can slide down it.
So...
What?
I will take any monster from Avita Vice over any of Siggy Shades.
Well, too bad. You have to pick one.
I know that's not the
That's
question.
not the question. The question is, if you had to
It's not the
fuck
question.
one of Siggy Shade's
The
male
question
guys...
was...
Do you want to pass this class or not?
Yeah.
wanna
I will
pass,
fail.
so give
I
me
will.
one.
You know,
gotta
I
fuck
have
a monster.
withdrawn from a philosophy class before.
Well, this is not optional. This is pass fucking fail.
Yeah, you either get an A plus
I will
or
give
an
you
F
an
minus.
F on our podcast.
I am going to hope against hope that the Loch Ness Monster will work.
Oh,
about
girl.
that?
Girl, you are
That is
brave.
shooting in the dark.
I cannot wait.
Because I've seen the potential first cover of, like, the clip art comical.
No,
And it's only
no.
gotten
Loch
worse
Ness Monster.
somehow.
Didn't the Bigfoot guy, like, didn't they, like, swing on vines or something?
Yes.
His penis.
His
Oh, his
penis
penis was a vine?
extended
Oh,
indefinitely.
shit.
His penis extends indefinitely, and they used it as a vine.
Oh my god, do it for the vine.
Oh my god.
Including chasing her through the woods, including being used as a device for her to, like, hold on to as if it were a vine.
Yeah.
That sounds hot. No, I'm kidding.
No. We're cutting there. We're cutting with Kristen saying that sounds hot.
No, you can't. You can't get rid of it. I don't know.
All right, Kristen, don't think, just go.
Swallowing water.
Tentacle monster or Loch Ness? That's what I'm going
a
with.
swallowing water guy.
All right, swallowing water wins. We all lose. Let's start the podcast.
We all lose. Hi, and welcome to my podcast, Knows What You Read in the Dark, a book club podcast made by chaotic people for chaotic people. I'm Kristen.
I'm Kaitlyn.
I'm B.
And I'm Lady.
And we are four friends here to tell you what's what about the books we read and loved this month, or the books that we hated this month.
Kaitlyn, I heard you loved the book that you picked for this.
I did. I did love the book that I picked for this month. So to part the curtain just a little bit for you, our dear listeners, it's been about 2 weeks since our last episode. But for us, we just recorded the Simp Olympics episode like a week ago, which did not really leave us very much time to pick a book, read it, and take notes on it before this recording. Naturally, I looked at the time crunch before us, and I said to myself, now that is not enough pressure. That's not nearly enough pressure, Kaitlyn. Let's make it worse. And I decided that hell or high water, I wanted to talk about a new release, a book that was a new release.
Oh, God.
You're crazy.
Now, this idea was absolutely much easier said than done, because finding a new release that I actually wanted to read was a lot more challenging than I expected.
What do you mean? There's no Colleen Hoover book that you want to read?
Shut up.
Barf.
No.
So, I did it. The book that I brought to the podcast today actually just came out on July 11th.
Damn, girl.
And I liked it. It was pretty damn good. I read Slayer of the Pirate Lord by Rebecca F. Kenney.
Oh, I've heard about this book because Clare Sager did a book in this like anthology or whatever.
Yes, it's an anthology series, which I eat those up.
Oh, I love
I'm
them.
so glad that they're becoming more popular because I eat up an anthology series. Slayer of the Pirate Lord follows Risa. Her name is Valerisa Cairnsey. She is a sex worker in the port city of Knockane. And she works at a brothel called the Winking Mermaid, but it's kind of like lower end. She definitely knows that she is not in the best position in the city, but what I really liked about her character is like, she's a sex worker, but she's not written as a sex worker who's like, looks down on herself for her profession.
Good.
Her dream is not to like get out and have a life outside of this. She wants to be a courtesan at the Royal Orchid, which is the most expensive and elegant pleasure house in the city. She is not thinking less of herself because of what she does.
I love that.
Yeah, it's great. And I'm going to talk more about it in a little bit. But she is given the opportunity to work at the Royal Orchid when a man shows up at the current brothel she works at and needs to hire a girl for a job, and she has to have red hair, which Risa does. Risa is not given a choice whether she's going to accept or decline this offer of employment, but she does want to take the job because if she completes what this man wants her to do, she will be given a permanent position at the Royal Orchid. The job she's been hired for is pretty simple. She has 1 week to prepare and train with the other courtesans at the Royal Orchid, and at the end of the week, she has to seduce and kill a man.
Nice.
Sounds easy enough.
Yeah.
Goals.
She's been told that this man is evil, he murders people, he sells children into slavery, literally anything that you can imagine that they're telling her that this man has done. I don't need to tell you that that's bullshit. You've read a romance novel before. You know what propaganda is.
He's just a tortured soul.
Yeah, And I also don't need to tell you that this murder does not go remotely to plan.
Oh, obviously.
No. So he shows up, and she is completely unable to kill him, not for lack of trying, but this man heals from any wounds she inflicts on him. So he doesn't die, and he actually lets her, like, take another shot when her first one doesn't work because he heals so quickly.
I love him so much already.
Not only does he not die or take it personally, but he tells her that he is a pirate lord sailing under the flag of the Pirate King, and he offers her a position on his ship. And these are the book's words, not mine, but he offers her as a position as the new ship's whore. She ends up accepting this position because the man who hired her to kill the pirate lord has kidnapped her mother and her good friend and won't release them until she completes the job, until she kills the pirate lord. Because she went to him, she was like, it didn't work. And he tells her, well, okay, you better figure something out because I have your mom and your friend and I'm not letting them go. Once Risa arrives on the ship, she learns that the ship needs to have a sex worker, or quote-unquote ship's whore, on the ship because the captain has powerful wind magic that he can only replenish by having sex with somebody.
What?
You told me about this?
All right.
And her words in Discord was like, the ship doesn't work unless he fucks raw, and I was like, this sounds amazing.
It's
Amazing.
amazing. It's absolutely amazing. The reason for this is because, so there are these like legends of people
You could
around.
tell me there's no reason, I'd be fine
I
with
know,
it.
right?
But there's these legends of these people in this world that have really powerful magical abilities. Because you don't have to be as powerful as he is to have magic. There's the healer that's on the ship, who is one of my favorite characters in the whole book, but he has healing magic, and he's not one of these special people. But this guy is basically a demigod. His mother was a goddess. His father's a normal man. He doesn't know who it is. A little bit of a spoiler. They kind of speculate early on that his magic is linked to sex because she was a fertility goddess. They're right. It's pretty obvious from the get-go, like...
Yeah, I mean, he has to fuck raw.
Yeah, she's like a love, like sex and fertility goddess that is his mother. So that's why he needs to have sex to replenish his magic. They didn't need to say all that, but it's fine. I would have been on board anyways.
Honestly,
But
yeah.
like the uber nerd in me. Okay, so there's this temple on Delos where it's basically the Temple of Venus literally had prostitutes as part of the temple attendance.
Hell yeah.
So at one point, there's this really cute little guy that's on the ship. His name is Red. He's like a young man who's kind of very nervous around Risa at first because like she's a beautiful woman and her job is to have sex with people on the ship. So like he's kind of nervous around her. But at one point they have this like really cute little bonding moment, and he gives her a charm that is for this fertility goddess, and it says that it is like, he said that the legend he heard about this little charm is that it should be worn by a true servant of pleasure. It's so cute, and
Aww.
it's like this little charm that she wears that makes her feel better, and like it's awesome. But yeah, it's kind of in that same vein. So Risa decides to sign the contract to work on the ship, and she's hiding this secret plot of hers to murder the captain. I don't need to tell you that all of her expectations and ideals that she has built up about the captain kind of come crumbling down as she learns more about him and spends more time with the crew. And what follows in this book is just an adventure filled with magic and treachery. There's this really great found family aspect going on with the crew, self-discovery, lots of like action, tons of fucking sex. Like,
Hell yeah.
everywhere you could possibly imagine. We're talking on the deck in front of the crew, like in her quarters, in the ocean, everywhere. I would not say that this book changed my life, but I enjoyed every minute that I was reading this book. I had a lot of fun.
That's what matters.
Well, that's exactly
Yeah.
what matters.
I wasn't really convinced going into this that I was going to enjoy it because of the whole like trope with his magic. It's a little bit too close to the fanfic trope, fuck or die, which I hate.
And it's very silly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very silly. It annoys me. And I honestly don't think that the romance and the character dynamics in this book would have worked had these two characters been anybody else than who they were. And really the main reason it works is because of how Risa is written and characterized. Risa, as I said, is a sex worker. This is her job. It's her career. And she's not ashamed of that. There are people outside of her, like in the beginning of the novel, that kind of make her feel she should be ashamed of it, but she's not ashamed of it. She wants something better for herself, but better does not mean not sex work. She knows that there can be something better for her inside of this career field. And her dynamic with the crew is really influenced by this. Everyone on the ship is open about the fact that they understand that this is a job. They respect her, and they respect that about her. None of them treat her like she's less because of her job. And the only person on the crew who does treat her like less is a shitty person, and one of the bad guys turns out to be one of the bad guys. So
it's all fine.
So
Nice.
there,
Yeah.
yeah. They all respect her job, and they understand that she deserves respect and compensation, and they're not owed anything from her. They're not entitled to her services because she has a contract where basically, like, so she needs to sleep with the captain because he needs to replenish his magic so that they can make the ship go. in her contract, it says if she wants, she can take extra work from the men and they have to pay her for it. She can refuse anybody at any time. It is at her discretion. She can even refuse the captain.
Ooh.
It is totally at her discretion. She gets a weekly wage as well as any payment from the men if she chooses to offer services to them. She's a person to everyone on the ship, first and foremost.
Amazing.
Like, nobody has, I mean, apart from Red, who is a young man and is very much like, she makes him seem like he is kind of juvenile because he hasn't really experienced the world, but everybody else on the ship has. So none of them are like weird or nervous around her or like, you know, that kind of trope that you've seen where there's a character who's very overtly sexual and everybody is flustered around. Like, not at all like that. The dynamic of this crew was written so well. And everybody was really likable and full and had a great personality. And you can tell that they're not just treating Risa kindly and with respect because she is...
Because they have to?
No. Well, no, I was going to say because she's the main character and that's what, you know, the main character is the special one in the book, blah, blah. They had a previous ship's whore. And she actually fell in love with one of the pirates and they got married. That's why she left. And they all talk about her fondly. They all respected her as well. Like, it's just who these people are. Like, they respect her because that's her job. And they respected the last lady who did this job. And they'll respect the next lady who does that job, you know? The characters were written really well. The dynamics were fun. The captain and Risa are so stupid. Oh my God, it's amazing. He wants a redhead because he's, quote unquote, in love with this woman who's a redhead that he can't have. But really, it's just like he has this massive crush on the Pirate King's wife. And he's never actually
How
really...
embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. It's so fucking embarrassing.
Yeah.
He's never actually, like, really met her. He's only, like, seen her a couple of times. And he has this big idea built up in his head about her. And then Risa just comes through like a fucking battering ram and is like, well, here you go.
This is what you get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
It was a lot of fun. I loved literally every minute of it. And I'm probably going to read more of the anthology series. I really, really enjoyed it. So that was my new release for this month. Slayer of the Pirate Lord by Rebecca F. Kennedy.
Sounds so good. See, the one I saw was Clare Sager's. I think it's Slain the Fate Prince or something.
Yeah.
Shifter Prince?
It is Shifter Prince, yeah. And it looked really good, and I knew it was an anthology. But, you know, like, books and anthologies can be very hit or miss, especially when you have different authors in the anthology. But this one sounds really good. Like, it kind of gives me the vibes of, the other Clare Sager book that we all read.
Beneath Black Sails.
Except, like, she didn't do sex work in that book, but, I mean, it's the same kind of ordeal.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it sounds really, really good. I will definitely read it.
Yeah. Especially since you're kind of in like a romance rut right now, definitely pick it up. It's on Kindle Unlimited. Pick it up.
Okay, yeah, I will. Yeah, absolutely.
Pick it up tomorrow, Kristen, because I promise you will get swept up in it so fast. I really I started it the day it came out last week because I was like, again, looking for a new release and I couldn't really find anything I was interested in. I was like, all right, this sounds kind of fun. And I started the day it came out because I wanted enough time to finish it. I finished it the next day. I finished it literally in 2 days.
Wow.
I was up. It was one of those books where I started it like, okay, I'm about to go to bed. Let me read like a couple of chapters. And the next thing I knew, it was literally 2:00 in the morning. And I had been reading since 10:30.
Damn. Those books always hit so good, though.
Yeah. So, yeah. Lots of fun. Loved it.
Well, I 1000% am going to read it. Because like I said, I've been in a romance kick and it sounds right up my freaking alley.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to make Kristen add to her TBR.
Okay.
With my book.
I've already added 2 today, so.
Yeah. So, I was renewing my library card at my local public library. And I was like, all right, let me go look around. So I went up to the top floor where they have all the adult stuff. And I was just skimming along the, this section of the shelving that just had like new fiction. And so I wasn't really looking for anything in particular. Just scanning the new fiction. Which is everything, right? No specific genre or, trope or whatever. Just new fiction, right? And new adult fiction. And so I came across this book, and it had, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it had a Roman statue on it. It's actually Italian, but it's Bernini's Apollo and Daphne. And I was like, all right, this is a cover, okay. And then the name of the book is called The Latinist by Prins. I was sitting there going, yes, let's read this blurb. And so I am that person, like, I'll be drawn in by a book cover, but unlike some of us, I will also read the book blurb.
Just at me.
I was like, just at Lady next time, Jesus.
I'm really bad about that too, Lady. Like, we do rag on you a lot for that, but I am so guilty of that.
Thank you.
Pretty much every time I pick up a book.
Good.
So in reading the book blurb, the Apollo Daphne statuary on the front makes sense because basically this book has, like, I think the book said it was like a contemporary, like, reimagining of the Daphne Apollo myth, which I'll get back to. This was literally like, hark back to my days in graduate school. Oh my god, this is so familiar. So you have Tessa Templeton is one of your main characters, and she's a doctoral candidate at an imaginary college in Oxford. And this book involves basically this really difficult to navigate dynamic between Tessa, the doctoral candidate, and her specific doctoral advisor, Chris Eccles. And so if you're not familiar with this, like, your doctoral advisor can, like, make or break your career. And so when we were talking earlier about dark academia and the power dynamic, there's an inordinate amount of power that an advisor, or and even later, like your doctoral committee that you have to, like, do your defense for, what they have over your getting your actual doctorate and also just your career in general. There's a huge amount of, like, influence. I can't even describe it. And this book gets into it. Basically, you have this classics professor, Christopher Eccles, who is her doctoral advisor, and he takes a very specific interest in Tessa. Not just her work, but eventually, like, unhealthy infatuation, unhealthy obsession. To the extent, right, she's done everything. They call them, like, ABD or EBD, but everything but the dissertation and everything but the degree. She's done everything for her doctorate except for her thesis defense, which means she's, like, sending out resumes for jobs and stuff. And you read even from the first blurb, but Chris basically, like, his recommendation letter that gets sent with her applications makes or breaks whether she gets an interview and such. And she finds out essentially that, like, he has sent this really, it's worded so specifically to convey that she's, like, mediocre instead of brilliant. And so she's getting rejections, she's not getting interviews, and she's realized that he's sabotaged her career in order to, like, handicap her career so that she has to stay close to him.
And then she murders him. The end.
Nice.
If only.
Great book. Excellent book.
That's
Thank
just
you.
the beginning. Like, that's just, like, you find that out from the book blurb that he's sabotaged her career, and the book is, like, her finding this out and being like, holy shit, what the fuck do I do? Because, like, there is no recourse. Even if she files a complaint, she's, like, torching her career, you know? And so it has that whole power dynamic, like, hovers over the entire book until the very end. So hold on, does that qualify for dark oh, and we're at college, right? We're at Oxford. I don't know, does that qualify as dark academia?
I think it's in the wheelhouse for sure.
It's there.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have, like, fully committed, but they're dating.
Yeah, you know, they've been on a few dates the last couple months. Yeah. But you know,
things might be getting serious, but who knows?
We got to hear more to know if it's going to completely be solidified.
Let's talk about this reimagining aspect of it. Okay, so the story that it's reimagining is the story of Apollo and Daphne, and are you familiar with it at all?
No.
Nope.
All right, so the retelling and reimagining is mostly coming from Ovid's Metamorphoses, which is basically this. It's written in the characteristic of an epic story. So think think Homer, right? The Iliad, the Odyssey, think the Aeneid. And the Metamorphoses is written in the manner of an epic. Ovid writes around the time, by the way, of the Emperor Augustus, the first emperor. When you talk about like the Empire of Rome, he's the first emperor. And his like patron deity is Apollo. So before I even get into like the myth, just there's like this Apollo Daphne story. Before I even get to what the story is, there's when Ovid is writing, he writes a lot of stuff, including, right, the Metamorphoses, but he also writes like some books that like one of them basically is like how to pick up girls at the circus. There's some other things too. But so Ovid eventually in his career gets exiled from Rome, which as a poet and someone trying to be like in it, that's a big deal. And he ends up writing these poems called the Tristia about basically being exiled, and they're like super depressing. He gets exiled, what he calls a carmen et error, basically for making a mistake. And a carmen is talking about like a song or a poem. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people assumed it was the books that talked about like how to pick up girls, because Augustus had this really strict like moral program that he was trying to enforce, including like things about marriage or like getting proper Roman women to have lots of babies and like giving them special rights if they had lots of babies and stuff. And so a lot of people assume it was the book being like with pickup lines and like how to like trick girls into to like going along with your schemes and such. But there are some people who think it might actually be the Metamorphoses, and in particular because of the kind of negative way that Ovid portrays Apollo, especially in this story of Apollo and Daphne. And so when I get into the myth and talking about it, like, again, there's a huge power dynamic, right, with the story of Apollo and Daphne. And so when you think about that power dynamic in the myth, and then when you think about this reimagining of it in the story, it like lends to the tension of like the almost like impotence of both Daphne and then also Tessa in these circumstances when someone has so much power over you. Anyway, so the story of Apollo and Daphne, Apollo had a bunch of lovers. Now, what's interesting with Apollo is that many of those lovers reject his amorous advances. So think of like Cassandra, if you know Cassandra from the Iliad, especially with the Iliad and Odyssey, like this princess of Troy. But so, her curse of being able to always prophesy something, but no one around her believes it, it's because she spurned Apollo, that she rejected, like he gave her the gift and then she rejected him, and he was like, well, I can't take the gift away, but I'm going to make sure no one believes you. Yeah, so there's a lot of like, and this is where we get into like Apollo, doesn't react well. Like he does not have the emotional regulation to like understand when people reject him, and he doesn't take it well.
Clearly.
And this also kind of so in the story of Apollo and Daphne, there are various versions, but essentially Daphne is this nymph. Her father is a river god, and she's a nymph. And Apollo sees her and is just like, ooh, pretty, mine. And I should preface that in the version from Ovid, basically Apollo has just killed this monster called Python on the mountain of Delphi. And so he's boasting about it, and he like boasts to Cupid, who also uses bows and arrows. And he's boasting at Cupid, being like, oh, look at your like puny little bow. Like that's so stupid. I just killed this giant monster. And so basically he's trying to rub it in Cupid's face, and Cupid's like, I'll show you. And so he hits Apollo with an arrow that will ensure that he falls in love with the next person that he sees. And then he hits Daphne with a lead arrow that ensures that she will not fall in love with the next person she sees. And then they see each other. And so Apollo is like, ooh, pretty, mine, grabby hands. And Daphne is like, fuck that.
Get this fucking weirdo away from me.
Yeah. Put that thing back where it came from, or so help me.
And so the story of Daphne and Apollo is about Apollo pursuing Daphne, and Daphne being like, fuck off, dude.
Fuck no.
Right, fuck no. And the myth changes, it's myth. But basically, in the myth, the short version is that Daphne appeals to her father. She's running by his river and appeals to her father, like, please help me, father. Like, I can't outrun him. He's a god. Like, what? Like, I need help. And her father ends up changing her. He can't, like, specifically outright deny the god per se. And he can't quite, like, make her, like, get her to escape, like, pull her out of the situation. So he changes her, right, from a nymph into a tree, specifically a laurel tree. And so the statue that I mentioned that's on the cover of the book is Bernini's interpretation of Apollo catching up to Daphne as she's turning into this laurel tree. And if you're familiar with any of the content about gods and goddesses, the laurel tree is the tree that becomes sacred to Apollo. It shows Apollo in a fairly negative light. Like, he's chasing after this nymph to rape her. And there's a very famous simile in it comparing Daphne to a hare running away from a dog pursuing it. There's references to Apollo being so, like, he's chasing her and he's like, but slow down a little bit. Just, I'm so worried about you getting, like, twisting your ankle. He doesn't say that one, but, like, getting caught on a branch and, like, what the thorns might do to your legs and mar your beautiful legs, and just slow down a little bit more. And it's like, slow down so he can catch you. And it's Apollo doesn't look great in the story.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that whole story is superimposed on this reimagining. And in particular, part of, like, Tessa's dissertation involves this Latin story. Like, she goes through it and discusses some of the scholarship behind it. Anyway, so to not spoil it, like, if you see the image of the Bernini sculpture and you know the ending of the story, and you see, like, basically Daphne has no choice. And she is, like, in order to escape her fate of basically being raped by a god, she is what's called terminally metamorphosed. In some of the metamorphoses, and metamorphose means to transform, essentially, into a new form. And so the big idea behind the Metamorphoses of Ovid is to talk about the, like, most savage, like, beginnings of the earth, right? And to the, like, coming into the, like, for him, the modern Roman world, but, like, into more civilization. And so there's a couple of times where people will be transformed, but they'll be transformed back or something like that. And Daphne is terminally transformed. She's transformed into the laurel tree, and there is nothing else. There's no changing back. The other really interesting thing is that this takes place in there's 15 books in the Metamorphoses. This takes place in book 1. Like the second half of book 1, which means, like, when we're talking about most civilized stories versus not, this is one of the most savage stories, and the like panic and violence in some of the wording that Ovid uses is significant. And so you take this story and you know that Daphne doesn't win. Not really. Like, she doesn't get raped. She's not Apollo's wife, but she's still possessed by him with being the laurel tree. She's still possessed by him. And so you have that dread in the narrative where everything Tessa does to try and escape from the clutches of Chris, and she keeps getting pulled back in because of certain illegal things that he does to be able to keep her in his web. And she can't quite figure it out, and she can't solve what's going on. And she seeks to, like, find other ways to get notoriety, knowing that, like, he's trying to keep her stuck next to him. And so it's just fascinating, like, having that myth hanging over the story until the very end. And does it work out the same way or not? And, like, even until the very end, there's a moment where, like, the web just gets tighter and tighter and tighter, and Tessa, like, does she give in or no? And so it was a really interesting read, overall. I don't know in terms of recommending this. I think yes, but also, like, this is talking about Latin, and it's talking about classics and graduate work in classics. And so there's a huge portion of this book that spoke intimately to me and my experience in graduate school. Just, like, there's certain office politics that get mentioned in the book that, like, just just immediately brought me back to the offices and libraries and office hours and professors and the office infighting that I experienced in graduate school. There's reference to when Tessa talks about her experience, like doing undergraduate work and then eventually going to Oxford, right, for graduate work. But she talks about she has a break. She's in a relationship at the beginning of the book that very quickly, like very soon, is basically like broken up. But she talks about, you know, she's part of her narrative is that she's remembering back to this. And she makes reference to not just certain lines that I have read that I was like, yup, I know how that feels reading that line in Latin and like thinking about it. But she references like when you translate, and this is again stuff that like I feel like is only specific to certain fields, but like I guess you could say it, but like just she's trying to translate, which means the best I can explain translation, it's not for one, right? When you have to translate across languages, especially a language as like inflected as Latin, you're like elbow deep in it, trying to like pull and tease out the bits of it.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Right? And so she brings that up and like, and she brings that up, Tessa does in her narrative, and talking about like trying to translate and having like textbooks and grammars and dictionaries like strewn around you. And I really do mean it's elbow deep, because sometimes you're looking up a word and you're like, I have to hold my elbow on this page of this dictionary while I also look up this reference in like the classical dictionary to understand that, just so I can write down one simple vocab word with the context and nuance of it, you know, like. And so there's references in the book of that happening, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm having a flashback.
It's giving me dark academia, but like as a basis for what the aesthetic wants to achieve, if that makes any sense. Like not the idealized version of what we know now as dark academia,
but like what it actually is.
Like what they're trying to emulate with the aesthetic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I don't think the book was ever advertised as dark academia.
No,
it was
not.
Advertised as an academic thriller.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the term dark academia is very much like a new thing too. Like it's 2010s term.
Yeah, yeah. There's also reference like, and this is again just like the nerdiness in me. Like my undergraduate degree is in classical studies, so it is a little bit of what's called like classical like literature. So you study just the Latin and Greek texts. And those people call themselves Latinists or Hellenists if they like Greek, or they call themselves philologists, lovers of words, if they do both. But my half of my degree, right, was language, and half of it was basically history, culture, heritage. And so basically, if you ever get into graduate school with Latin, you have to choose, which I hate. So you have to choose, am I going to be a philologist and only look at the words and the literature, and that is the most important thing when you're studying the ancient world in my mind? Or do I look at archaeology or anthropology, right? The more physical content. And so what's interesting also is that Tessa, one of her ways to seek out, you know, from under the thumb of Chris is she attends an archaeological dig. And so for me, it was also like, oh, I love this. And she's in Italy, and again, I have done an archaeological dig south of Rome in Cinzano di Roma. And I remember talking to the director there, like archaeologists from Italy are no joke. They're like, for your doctoral work, you have to put your hand, this director was telling me she had to put her hand in a bag, and she couldn't see it was in the bag. And she had to be able to identify broken pottery pieces just by touch for the exact age and date and slip, which is in terms of like pottery, and like the exactness, and just by touch. And there's certain things, like certain types of pottery that are only known from what you can see on the pottery, like certain like patterns. Anyway.
I thought my degree was hard.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So like at one point, like you get to a little bit of taste of like the archaeology and also the dynamic between archaeologists and philologists, and the like who thinks who is better, but who has the more reliable, like archaeologists hate it when they have to bring in a philologist for translation, because philologists are like so high and mighty when they're like, oh, you need to make sure you get the translation right, so you had to bring us in. And that happens in this book, and I was like, yep, that tracks. So to the extent, like, I read through this whole book, and then I read through all of the acknowledgments. And sure enough, the author studied Latin in high school. I couldn't read whether or not he studied Latin in college, but funnily enough, he studied Latin at a very specific private school in New York, and I know his teacher, because his teacher, he mentioned his teacher in the acknowledgments, and I know that teacher who taught my AP Latin training many, many years ago, so I was like, I know that name. And then also just several of the names in the book are close, but not exact, to names that I know in the field of classics. Just like certain professor names and certain things. I was just like, I know people with these last names, but you've changed the first name or things like that. So it was very clear, like, Prins had definitely done his homework. And that many of the translations in the book, like, he had done, I know, knowing his teacher, he had translated this exact Latin that he included. But I also, like, there's a reference to, a certain fragment, which you don't need to know about that, but I just want you to, like, yes, I've talked about Apollo and Daphne, but, like, there's a hilarious amount of, like, adult content that survives from the Latin world, including there's a fragment that's mentioned. I won't read the Latin to you, but the translation was basically talking about if, when the mattress straps have been restored, it might reveal me lying naked with Kaitlyn. And it's talking about this fragment preserved from, like, a female poet, where she's talking about getting it on with her husband.
Hell yeah.
In this very poetic way. And I'm just like, if you didn't know, like, classics is not nearly as stodgy and, like, uptight as some people think. Like, yes, there are definitely times when it's that, and, like, yes, people get worked up at classics conferences over the most ridiculous things, and it's amazing and hilarious to watch from, like, a very much non-elitist third person, like, outside of it thing. But also, we have shit like this, where, like, a woman's talking about basically, like, having a whole good time in bed with her husband, or Ovid is telling you pickup lines, right, for how to get girls at the circus. And there's another, like, there's some, if you ever read Catullus, like, Catullus has some poetry that, like, literally, there's these texts called lobes that will translate, they'll show you Latin on one side and English on the other, and some of Catullus's poems are so adult content naughty, they won't translate it into English, they'll put it in French.
Because the French are naughty.
Well, no, just assuming that, like, if you know French and Latin and English, right, like, maybe you're learned enough to be able to handle this content, but, like, there's literally a line in Catullus where he talks about being so angry at a guy that he says, I want to skull fuck your skull. Like, you're just like,
holy
what?
Shit!
Right? I read this. Right? I read that in high school. Like,
that's intense.
Anyway, I won't spoil what happens, but it is, you really do read thinking, oh my god, how does Tessa, get out of the web of Chris Eccles? Is she going to be like Daphne? Like, it really is this constant pursuit. And if you've ever read, like, and potentially if you do read this book, like, just read the English translation, the dread of the pursuit in the Daphne Apollo story, like, comes in this book, and you just, like, can't look away. You have to find out.
Yeah, I'm very interested, like, very much so.
And so that's, I don't know if I can recommend it, because, like, I don't know if it's, like, did this just hit home with me because I knew about so many, like, extra stuff that was being mentioned?
I think that would be a good way to tell if it's actually, like, because if one of us, or anybody, really, reads it and can enjoy it the same way or in a similar way, that just would speak to the author and the way that they're able to make that, like, very specific feeling and very specific experience you're talking about universal across, like, a variety of different things.
And I think it could. Like, there's moments when he talks about Tessa, like, finding, like, what drew her in with Latin, and I feel like it's a good portrayal of what a lot of people in Latin find. Like, the way that poetry can like, cross the boundaries of time and still reach you. I think it's put well there. But I think even without understanding some of the, like, oh, I have walked in these circles like I have. I think it portrays it well enough that you can understand like the academia side, like the tension in academia and such. It didn't like it's not like my favorite, but it definitely like worked for me.
Hey, not every book can be your favorite, you know what I mean? But sometimes they work, and that's all that really matters at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think what you all would like, I know I went off about like the things that, reach my heart, but you get both Tessa and Chris's points of view. So you get to have that irony as the reader of knowing the illegal workarounds that Chris has done to keep Tessa in his hold. And you also have both Tessa and Chris become more unhinged as they go. And so you read their narrative where like you read their train of thought and you're like, man, you are so like fucked. And so that's also, I think that would be really appealing, just seeing how like just unhealthy and toxic it gets.
Everyone, you know me, here. I love a good toxic dynamic.
Eats that up.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, especially you get both points of view.
I like that.
And there are times that you want to just scream when you know information that one or the other doesn't have, that you just want to like scream out loud about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, sounds really good.
It was good. And especially I think it was on the group chat. I don't know if it got mentioned when we were talking about what defines dark academia. But I think, Lady, you mentioned there has to be a certain type of, or maybe it was Kristen, but the prose had to have a certain tone to it. And there's definitely this author, like, when you read an author where like they use a word that you don't encounter a lot, but it's used appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
And this author does that. Mark Prins definitely does that. Like there are certain words that you're like, that are used in certain like elite circles. And you're like, yep, that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Like that was used. Yeah. And that happens a lot.
Say less.
Yeah.
How about a game now?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, it's time for everybody's favorite game where you guess the book on the 1-star review.
Yes.
Yay! I picked books that not everyone has read, but
that's perfect.
Because it was getting hard to do because not all of us have read all the same things.
And we keep guessing the same thing.
Yeah, we keep guessing the same 4 books.
Yeah, so I tried to pick some different stuff. So let's just go ahead and get started. So here's the first one. I could forgive the shoddy world building. I could forgive weird, out-of-whack outbursts amidst otherwise normal language. I could forgive environments so sketchily and poorly described that you just have to fill in enormous swaths of information on your own. But I just can't forgive well over 100 pages of absolutely bloody nothing happening.
House of Earth and Blood?
No. That's a good guess,
I was convinced that was gonna be it.
That's a really good guess, but no.
Lightlark.
No. That's also a good guess.
Lightlark doesn't get bad reviews, apparently.
Oh, shut the hell up.
I don't
it's
get
perfect.
it. Hundreds of pages of nothing happening.
I think it is...
Which of us has read it?
3 out of 4.
That makes it so hard. Is it Gideon the Ninth?
It is Gideon the Ninth.
Fuck yeah.
Okay.
When you said 3 out of 4, that's what gave it away.
Yeah. I should have kept my damn mouth shut. Okay. Next one. This was so insta-lovey that it was cringeworthy. It feels like everything is off-kilter and thrown together and cheap.
I mean, Muscles and Monsters or whatever that we read last month.
I mean, yeah, but no.
2 wrongs make a right.
No.
Or don't make a right.
I'll be shocked if anyone gets this one, honestly.
Insta-lovey.
I avoid insta-love like the plague.
I think all of us do, honestly.
Tithe by Holly Black.
Nope.
I like how we're all trying to avoid saying the books that we usually guess for this.
But I will say, Lady, you're warm.
Is it the darkest part of the forest then?
It is the darkest part of the forest.
I was just gonna say it and I didn't want to say it because I was like, fuck
point.
That.
That's the fucking point, though.
I was literally thinking it right before you said it,
This
lady,
makes
and I
me
was
mad
like,
because I'm like, yeah,
I
that's
don't wanna.
literally what the book is about.
I know.
Like, yeah, it's instead of either teenagers.
I don't like who's laughing right now.
It just it's just so funny. I love how heated people get over these. It's hilarious to me. I thought Kaitlyn would go the fuck off about Gideon the Ninth, and she was weirdly calm about it.
Oh no, I love reading the 1-star reviews of Gideon.
I mean, it just sounds. I'm not fully into the fandom like you guys are. That's just a bad take.
It's just a bad
But
take.
this is like the show me you don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's weird out of whack outbursts. That's the fucking point.
That's... And also, like, I'm trying to picture, like, what...
Like, which part of the book has nothing in it? I don't understand.
I don't understand.
Literally nothing. Like, the whole book is like, there's something fucking buck wild happening.
Yeah.
But, anyways. Okay, next one. This book was my Mount Everest. I first started reading it a few months ago, but I got about 60 pages in before I had to stop because I just couldn't get into it. The characters annoyed me, the plot was confusing, and it seemed like a jumble of things put together, and for the life of me, I just couldn't get through it.
I mean, Lightlark, but that's probably not the answer.
It's not
Sorry,
Lightlark.
that sounds like Gideon the Ninth.
It's not that.
It does sound like a 1-star review somebody would leave on Gideon the Ninth.
It really does.
Yeah.
But no.
If we were villains?
No.
Oh. I knew you wouldn't go into the 1-star reviews, but I thought maybe.
I'm not brave enough.
I said captive prince, but I don't think you heard me.
Oh, no, that's not it.
A jumble of things put together and unlovable characters. A throne of glass?
No.
How many of us have read it?
2 of 4.
Is it the Raven cycle?
It is. It's the Raven Boys.
Oh my god. Alright. I got 60 pages in, then just stop, baby. Nobody's making you read it.
I just got off the hold of that for my library,
Yes.
so
Read it.
after I finish this Tessa Bailey book, I'm jumping into that.
Hell yes. Yeah, well, it's still hot outside. You should read that.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, y'all keep mentioning the Latin in it, so alright.
If it's bad, I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah, we don't rate it for the Latin, we rate it for the codependency, okay? The codependency...
It's like the story of every book that has Latin in it.
Okay, next one. I'm convinced that this book was written in a spiral notebook while the author sat at the back of a school bus en route for high school. There was nothing remotely interesting about the writing, the characters were flat and had the personalities of cardboard boxes, and the editing was non-existing.
I mean, I hope it's about Throne of Glass, because that
It's not
basically
Throne
is
of
the
Glass.
truth. Like, the first Throne of Glass book was like a Cinderella retelling or some shit like that.
This is giving me, like, Hunger Games review, but I don't think you would do the same book in different
No,
episodes.
if I put it on here, we've never talked about it, like, on one of these games before.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Twilight.
No.
I mean, true.
But, I mean, yes,
But yes, but no.
not at this particular moment.
How many of us have read it?
I think just one.
Oh god. That's gonna be a hard one.
Trying to think books only Kaitlyn has read.
I'm also trying to think of books only I've read.
Oh my god, is it the Starless Sea?
No. No.
Is it Down Comes the Night?
Kristen's read that.
Is it Prince of Sorrows?
It is Prince of the Sorrows.
Oh my god.
I'm so sorry, lady.
They're
I
wrong.
was trying to think, what has Lady only read? Prince of the Sorrows.
We did talk about the bad editing, but that they get a pass for that. It's self-published. They get a pass for
Yeah,
that.
it's self-published.
Exactly.
Like, you gotta ignore it.
The stale characters? What the fuck?
Well, and like, I would be upset if a high school person wrote that.
Yeah, I mean... That's some smut for a high schooler to write.
Yeah. Okay, I have one more. It's a bonus.
Yes.
Akatar, sweetie, you don't look so good.
Is it A Court of Silver Flames?
No.
Damn it.
Is it Lightlark?
It is Lightlark.
I was gonna say, what's the...
I was like, what's an Akatar ripoff?
Oh my god. Akatar, Throne of Glass, The Hunger Games.
Akatar, sweetie, you don't look so good. I was like cracking up. I was just in there like looking to see if I could find a funny one, and this was like one of the top ones, and I was like, I'll make it a bonus.
So, Kristen, when are you reading the sequel?
Well,
Is it out?
No.
I'm about to like embarrass myself. I looked today to see when it comes out.
Hell yeah, you did, bitch.
I was like, when is this book gonna ruin my fucking life? And it comes out in November.
Get an arc of it.
Oh, do you think I'd get approved?
Maybe.
No, because you're not a bootlicker.
Yeah, right. They'd read my review about Lightlark.
Honestly, she probably gives her arcs out as to TikToker comments.
Yes.
Probably.
I wouldn't be surprised.
But yeah, it comes out I think late November.
Supposedly people have gotten their hands on the Loch Ness Monster, the Siggy Shade Loch Ness Monster, an arc of that, and I have scoured the fucking internet to try and find them. They do not exist. These people are
She
lying.
probably hands them out in back alleys, Kaitlyn.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
She's like that creepy guy with the coat, and she's like, "Hey, do you want an arc?" And she pulls it out of her coat.
It's engraved on a CD.
Caitlin, just plug in your other external hard drive and it's there because you wrote it.
We haven't talked about this on the podcast yet, but the book club has started a smear campaign that I am Siggy Shade, which...
It's not a smear campaign, it's just the facts.
It's not. You're gonna get me sued for impersonating...
Kaitlyn is Siggy Shade. Change my fucking mind.
I would, but some of that shit is so balls off the wall crazy. I just can't attribute it to Kaitlyn.
Yeah, I mean, in all seriousness.
Kaitlyn has seen a penis in her lifetime.
I know what a penis looks like. I do know what a penis looks like, actually.
And it's not whatever Siggy's put in her
It's not whatever Siggy Shade is writing they look like.
God.
That's the only reassuring thing is when the sex stuff is so wrong, I'm like, nope, can't be Kaitlyn.
It's not even the wild and crazy stuff is supposed to be out there. It's some of the fundamental stuff is wrong in there.
Yeah.
Exactly, and I'm like, nope, Kaitlyn would not get this fundamentally wrong. Nope. Yeah.
Well, then some of the dialogue that's written, I'm like, Kaitlyn would never put that in a fucking
because
book.
I'm not Siggy Shade.
I could never be Siggy Shade because I would not have made that Krampus book so boring.
I would have told everybody by now.
That's also true.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, you'd have no more student loans.
No. All right. We have to stop talking about Siggy Shade on this podcast. I swear to God, this is 5 episodes in a row.
That's true.
We're not writing it down in the list of books.
It's still your fault. You brought those books to the podcast.
I did. I brought those books to the world, apparently, according to everyone. No.
Well, I mean, You're the one that started it because you were the one that was
Zoe started it.
Yes, you did because you said well, you've never seen me and Siggy in the same room, and it's well, just tell us that it's you then.
Zoe started all of this. She is the one who brought Siggy Shade to the chat, and I took it and ran with it.
Yeah, go ahead and blame it on somebody else. That's fine. Don't take any blame.
Do not test me. I will get the receipts.
I know you will.
We need to leave. I want to go to bed.
Okay,
Bye.
fine. Shit.
Goodbye.
Okay.
Goodbye, everyone. No outro this time. Goodbye.
Just guess what we talked about.
You get $5. I'll Venmo you $5 if you can tell us what books we talked about without us listing them for you.
Anyways, if you want to go if you want to go bully Kaitlyn online, you can do that at redinthedarkpod on Instagram and Tumblr. Our email is redinthedarkpod@gmail.com if you want to ask a question about any of the books that we discuss on this episode. Again, if you want to bully Kaitlyn, you can join our book club. You can find us at One Page Library on Instagram and Tumblr, which will have details on how to join our Discord. And finally, we're hosting some challenges on Storygraph through the book club this year, which you can find by searching One Page Library's Book of the Month and One Page Library's 23 for 2023 in the challenges section of the app. Kaitlyn's book this month was Slayer of the Pirate Lord by Rebecca F. Kenney, and B's book was The Latinist by Mark Prins. Other books we talked about this episode was Beneath Black Sails by Clare Sager, The Odyssey by Homer, The Metamorphoses by Ovid, Gideon the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir, The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black, The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, Prince of the Sorrows by Kellen Graves, and, unfortunately, Lightlark by Alex Aster. Keep reading and we'll see y'all next time. Bye!
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 Bye.